Hello, boys and girls. Today we're going to be building our vocabulary using semantic webs. Semantic webs are a special type of graphic organizer that not only helps us to know the meaning of a word, but also helps us to understand how to use that word when we are reading, when we are writing, and we are speaking. To help us use these webs, we're going to be using some vocabulary words that we've encountered in our fable, The Ant and the Grasshopper. By the end of the lesson, you will continue to use your context clues and the dictionary to find the meanings of unknown or multiple meaning words. You're also going to be using adjectives and adverbs in your reading, writing, and speaking. And finally, you will be able to use prepositions and prepositional phrases in your reading, writing, and speaking. So let's look at a semantic web. All right, if we look at this web, it looks a lot like other webs we've used before. It actually looks like a bubble map. The difference between a bubble map and a semantic web is that the semantic web actually has very specific purposes and ways in which it is to be used. So we're not just gathering ideas like we do in a bubble map, but we're actually going to be using each one of these bubbles for a specific purpose. So at the top here, you see that you have two lines. This first line is where we actually write the word that we're going to be getting some additional information about. So that's where we're going to actually write the word that we want the meaning of and the word that we want to use in our reading, writing, and speaking. The second line over here to the right is where we're going to list the part of speech. Remember that part of speech means that we're going to be able to identify the word as either a noun, a verb, an adjective, an adverb, and so on. Now we come to the actual bubbles of our web. The largest bubble here in the center is where we're going to write the meaning of the word. And that makes sense since it is the largest part of the bubble. So here's where we're going to write the meaning of our word. In our first bubble on the left side, we're going to write down synonyms. Remember that synonyms are words that have the same or almost the same meaning as our word. The same or almost the same meaning as our word. Our second bubble, the one over here to the right, is where we're going to list our antonyms. So first we're going to have synonyms, and then we're going to have antonyms. Remember that antonyms are words that have the opposite meaning of the unknown word. The opposite meaning of the unknown word. In our second bubble here at the bottom, we are going to list our adjectives or adverbs that would go with this word. So remember that if a word is a noun, then when we want to describe a noun, we use an adjective. For example, the purple pillow. And if a word is a verb, such as run, and we want to describe the way that someone runs, we may say runs quickly or runs swiftly. And that word swiftly or quickly, that would be considered our adverbs. And then in the final bubble here over on the right is where we're going to list prepositional phrases. Now, prepositions we've talked about mostly as just words that show a location. So, in, above, under, between. Prepositional phrases just take those words and it creates an entire phrase. So you might say, above the water. That is a prepositional phrase. Or under the tree. That is a prepositional phrase. All right. And then Finally, here at the bottom, we have one long line, and that's where we actually write our new sentence that we create. And I'm going to show you how to do that. So now you have your semantic web all labeled. So when you are looking at this, you are going to be able to use this to help you every time you create a semantic web. So I'm going to give you a few seconds to go ahead and label your web now. Label it just the way you see that I labeled the web on the screen. Okay, now that you have your web all labeled, we're ready to start identifying words that we're going to use on our semantic webs. We are going to be using words from our fable, The Ant and the Grasshopper. Remember that we looked at the video as well as read the book on this fable about a hardworking ant and a lazy grasshopper who were having some conversations about whether or not it is best to prepare for a time of need early or to wait until the last minute. We're going to review just about 25 to 30 seconds of that video. And while we're looking at the video, we're going to be looking at a couple of vocabulary words that were highlighted in the video so that we can use for our semantic webs. Here we go.
Saw the long line of ants again. They were all carrying grains of wheat.
Grains.
Where are you going with all that wheat? The grasshopper asked. We are taking it to our nest to save for winter, said one of the ants. You should gather some wheat too. It's going to be a long winter with lots of snow.
All right, so two of the words that we saw here were the word grains.
We are taking it to our nest to save for winter.
And the word gather.
Said one of the ants. You should gather some wheat too. It's going to be a long winter.
So those are the two words that we are going to actually be using for our semantic web. Grains and gather. Now I want you to go back to your semantic web, and I want you to think about all the information you're going to need to get from the dictionary in order to complete your web. So first, you're going to need to know the word. We're going to be looking at two words, grains and gather. You're going to need to know the part of speech. You're going to need to identify synonyms, and I'm only going to ask you for two synonyms. Antonyms, I'm only going to ask you for two antonyms. Adjectives or adverbs. So depending on which word you have, you may give me two adjectives or two adverbs to describe your word. And then two prepositional phrases that will fit for either of those words. Finally, you're going to write a new sentence using all of the information on this web. Well, you might say, how am I going to do all of this? I have no idea what you're talking about. Or maybe you said, I do understand, but I'm not sure how to do it by myself. Well, don't worry. You know I never leave you all on your own. So we're going to actually complete a web together for one word, and you are going to complete a web on your own for the second word. Let's get started. Okay, so now that we know all the information we need for our semantic web, we're now ready to use the dictionary to help us fill in that information. Here you see a copy of the dictionaries that we have in class. What you can do also is you can find a dictionary just like this on the web, online. So what you would do is you would go to the internet and you would type in, see here at the top, Merriam-Webster Dictionary. Now the word that we're going to work on together is gather. So you see here in the search box, I have already typed in for you the word gather. And all you do, see it ask you what you are searching for, and you're going to type in your word, gather, press enter, and now you have the meaning of the word gather. And all the information that you need to complete your semantic web is here for you. So let's kind of streamline what we're looking at. So we're going to look at what I call a screenshot just because we don't want to get confused. But if we look here, we see the word gather. We see right under gather that it is a verb. It is a verb. So let's go ahead and get our pencils ready, boys and girls, and let's go to our semantic web because we can start filling in some information right now. All right, so we know the word and we know the part of speech. Which word are we working on? Gather. So let's go ahead and we're going to write the word gather. Get your pencils ready and we're going to write G-A-T-H-E-R. Gather. All right, now we're ready to fill in the part of speech. What part of speech did we say gather was? Yes, a verb. So go ahead, get your pencils ready, and write in verb. V-E-R-B. Verb. Now we need to find the meaning of the word gather, and we need to find two synonyms, two antonyms, is it going to be an adjective or an adverb? Yes, you figured that out. It's going to be an adverb because the part of speech is a verb. So we need a word to describe the way someone can gather. Very good. And we're going to need two prepositional phrases. All right, so I'm going to give you a few seconds to look at that screenshot I gave you, and let's see if you can write for me the meaning of the word gather. I'll give you a few seconds. All right, so you should have for the meaning one of these two meanings inside of the middle bubble. Gather means to collect or to bring together. To collect or to bring together. So now it's our job to think about some words that might mean the same as gather. If gather means to collect or bring together, what would be another word or a synonym that would mean the same or almost the same as gather? Let's think. Let's try the word harvest. Try the word harvest. Remember when we harvest the pumpkins in October, we're gathering them, we're bringing them all together. Now you think of a synonym that you want to place inside of that same bubble. Now we're going to do the same thing for antonyms, a word that would mean the opposite of gather. What word would mean the opposite of gather? So if I'm not harvesting, maybe I'm giving it away. Maybe I am scattering. I think I'm going to use for my word scatter. So if I'm not gathering, I'm scattering. Now you add an additional word to the bubble for an antonym, a word that would mean the opposite. All right, now let's think of an adverb, a word to describe the way someone may gather. If I think about the ant and the grasshopper, what what word would I use to describe the way the ants were gathering up food for the winter? Were they moving slowly? Were they moving quickly? Were they doing it in a continuous way? Were they moving all the time? Okay, so for an adverb for gather, I'm going to use quickly. Quickly. So the ants were gathering quickly. Now you think of an adverb that you can add to the bubble. All right, now we're ready for our very last bubble, which is where we're going to include a prepositional phrase. So I want to think about a location where someone might gather. Someone might gather, let's think about the oil ranch. Yep, they might gather on a farm. Good job. Now you think of another location where someone might gather and write your prepositional phrase. Remember to use a location word: on, under, over, inside, outside. I'll give you a few seconds. All right, so now I'm ready for the very last part of my semantic web, and that is now to write a wonderful sentence that I can add to my writing collection. So here on my web, I know that the word gather is a verb, so that's an action word. It's something that can be done. I know what words have the same meaning, what words have a different meaning. I also know that because it's a verb, there are certain ways that people or animals might do this verb, this gather. It might be quickly, swiftly, slowly. And I know that there are locations where gathering can take place: on a farm, in a house, on a ranch, in a field, by the lake. Now I'm ready to write a sentence. Follow along with me as I show you how I am going to create a very great sentence using the information on my semantic web. All right, the farmer, because that seems like someone who might gather. The farmer gathered. Oops, am I running out of space? Yes. The farmer gathered. And what might a farmer gather? Some vegetables? Okay. The farmer gathered the vegetables. And where would he do this? On a farm. Okay. Now, it's looking a little too scattered and all over the place for me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take everything that we have on our web and I'm going to organize it for you and show you the completed project. All right, here we go. All right, so now we have everything nice and neatly organized and we can see our completed semantic web, just the way we wrote it out together. All right, so now you're going to get a chance to practice on your own. I want you to make sure that you keep your first semantic web that we created together using the word gather, and I want you to make sure you keep it close to you as you get ready to complete your second one for the word grains. Before you get started, I want you to take a few minutes and make sure you understand all the steps we went through to get this completed graphic organizer. If you have any problems, always stop and rewind your Sketchcast. Always stop and rewind your Sketchcast and go back and look at each step. And then when you're finished, you'll be able to show what you have done and what you have learned. I look forward to seeing this and to seeing and hearing you use these wonderful words in your reading, your writing, and your speaking. Talk with you soon.